You know that feeling that you have when somebody asks you a question and you're not really sure if you should answer in a political correct answer, something short, or if you give them the whole answer. I know exactly how you feel. So a while back, I was speaking at this conference, and as you know, I speak to a lot of conferences, and they had this long Q&A at the end. And so this one gal is sitting in the third row, and she's lovely, blonde hair, lots of energy. And she looks up and she says, "I want to know why you do what you do." And I thought, okay, I could just say I love to help people, or I love to grow companies, or I could think of some politically correct, I like to help people double their business in less than a year, hopefully. I could say something like that. And I was like, but that's not the real answer. And I think she wants the real answer. And all of a sudden I look around and we got hundreds of people all leaning in to see, what am I going to say? And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to say. So I looked out and I said, do you want to know the whole answer to that question? Because it'll take a bit. And I see all these people leaning in and they're all nodding and stuff like that and waving. Yeah, definitely. And I went, okay, you asked for it. And I shared something that I think maybe three or four people in the world knew that I had ever told. And I don't know what possessed me, but some part of my soul said, today's the day you need to share this. So I took a deep breath and I said, a while back, I was having a tough time. And um, we've all had those times where just nothing makes sense at all, just nothing. And this was then. And so I said, you know what? I have a program I'm doing in Hawaii. I should be happy about this, but I wasn't happy about anything. And I said, I've got like 9 hours of flight time. I'm going to just pray the whole time for some divine inspiration of some sort on how do I handle, some loss when you have loss in life. I'd lost, I lost people in my life I really loved, family, family and friends, and chosen family, which sometimes are even more important. So I was feeling a little lost and things were feeling kind of meaningless. And it was right at the holidays and I was alone. And I've spent a lot of my time at the holidays alone. And I know a lot of us have experienced that. Don't have a lot of family. I didn't have anybody special at that time in my life, like Steve, the adorable husband. Um, and so, yeah, I was feeling lost. So I get on the plane and I fly over to Hawaii, which again, most people would be like over the moon to be going to Hawaii. But I knew I was going to go to Hawaii, get off, help a bunch of people, speak at a conference, get right back into a taxi and sleep like 6 hours and then, get back on a plane and have to fly back for another program, get to fly back. I mean, it's a privilege, but there are times when even things that seem glamorous can be draining. Absolutely. So I'm on my way over there and I'm thinking, okay, divine inspiration. I need some help. Like, what's my purpose? Why am I here? Why am I still here while others aren't? What do I want in my life? Stuff like that. And so after about 5 or 10 minutes of prayer, I start to get impatient. I think I think we all can get that way. But and then after like half an hour, 2 hours, like, where's my divine inspiration? I want to read a book too. So so we're getting on here, and it's like an hour's going by, and I'm trying every form of prayer I've ever, or meditation or whatever you do. I was doing whatever you're doing in your practice, and I couldn't figure out what was really bothering me. I couldn't figure out what was next for me. I couldn't figure out what my real purpose was next, why I was still here. So I get off the plane and now I'm in a bad mood, like a really bad mood. And so I gather all my stuff and it is pouring. And so I stand outside waiting for the cab, and the water is getting all over me, and my mascara is running, and my beautiful suit is now looking, I look like a drowned rat, basically. And I got my arm out, like, okay, somebody come pick me up, please. Take me to the hotel. And so all of a sudden, the taxi cab pulls up, and this guy jumps out, and he's the most energetic, enthusiastic person I have ever met in my life. And what is more annoying when you're in a bad mood than somebody who's super chipper and happy? So even that bothered me. That's when you know you're in trouble. And so he came up to me and he said, "Let me get your bags and we'll put them in the taxi for you." He was just the nicest guy in the whole world. And I thought, wow, I mean, I could hope I just absorb some of that great energy and that wonderful attitude right now. And he had this accent, he's from Vietnam, I found out. He had this accent. And I'll do my best to kind of talk the way he spoke and then speak the way I spoke, only because I find that it's sometimes hard to tell who's talking when there was a lot of talking going on rapidly. So I loved the way he sounded. I don't know if I sound much like him, but just for differentiation and out of great respect for his culture, I will do my best to speak the way he spoke to me. All right. So I get in and he says, he looks back at me, he goes, "You okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Because what do you say? No matter what, no matter, you could be missing a limb. Somebody says, "How are you doing?" And you say, "Fine." And that is the law. We all do it, right? He goes, "Oh, you're not okay. Let me tell you a story. We in traffic. We got time." And I'm thinking, I hang around with professional speakers, and I've heard some of the best stories in the whole entire world. So any story that he's got for me can't possibly be as cool as what I've already heard, right? So in my head, I'm having this little dialogue, right? It's like, it's funny the things you think of. And he says, "Yeah, let me tell you the story." And I'm thinking, there's something really interesting about this guy. Meanwhile, let me tell you what's going on right now, and we'll get back to him. Now, it's years later, and I get to have this podcast where I find the most inspiring people in the world. And some part of me always thinks that everybody has those dark times. Everybody has those dark days. Not every day. I mean, you can't always learn in the peaks. So you learn half the time in the valleys. And I called it the Inspiring Victory Show, partly because of my cool name from the cool husband that I now have ownership of. But I wanted to be that person who, when you are feeling that way, you have someplace to go. And you have a tribe to hang out with who will support you and have that kind of chipper energy that he had, even if you don't. You know, where can you go to be inspired, to inspire others? Because sometimes when you don't feel inspired, inspiring others is the best way to feel inspired again. And a place where you could go to grow your business, grow yourself, grow and find ways to be more successful for your team, your company to be more successful. So this podcast, it turns out I was finding all the most inspiring people I know and then sharing them with you. And I have become so unbelievably inspired along the way. It's like I used to work for Jim Rohn, the great speaker, Jim Rohn. I think he spoke to like 30 million people in his career over like 60 years of speaking. He spoke forever. He was a wonderful mentor. He was very kind to me. But Jim, he always used to say, people ask me why am I always so motivated? Why am I always in a good mood? He said, he goes, "I got to listen to 8 hours of me being inspiring and motivating all day long. It has an effect on you." So I'm watching all of these podcasts. I'm interviewing all these amazing people. I'll tell you about some of them in case you haven't had a chance to watch them. I'll tell you which ones you got to go back and see. They're all good. They're all fascinating. They're all helpful, useful, inspiring, breathtaking, incredible human beings. But I'm watching all those and I'm becoming incredibly inspired at this stage beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And the tribe, you people who are watching it, listening to it on the podcast or watching it on YouTube or watching it streaming on every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central, watching it on LinkedIn, watching it on Facebook, the notes and the letters and the cards and just the support and the love I know that you're as inspired by these people as I am too. So let me tell you about some of the people that I have found really, really, really inspiring. Right in the beginning, we did one that was with Suzanne Nance, and she climbed Mount Everest. She's the first American woman to get the Explorer's Grand Slam, which means she's climbed all the top peaks around the world. You have to read her book. It's a great book on leadership. Talks about her corporate background. Also talks about climbing Mount Everest. She tells the whole story in the podcast episode, and then you can see it on YouTube or you can see it on your whatever podcast platform you like. But she's really interesting. And get her book because she has she has a whole great segment on called Ski or Die about how if you ski to the poles, no helicopter is going to come in and rescue if you break a ski. It's ski or die. They have no way to come and get you. So anyway, she's great. Her book is great. I love her. She's a wonderful person, Suzanne Nance. And that's a particular favorite episode of mine. Another one that I really love is by two-time Olympian Sherry Wynn, who is also a wonderful client, wonderful friend, somebody that I admire and adore, one of the best leadership coaches you'll ever meet in your life. Really, really spectacular. And she has a personal human story that is so emotionally raw and human and connecting that it moved me to tears. I absolutely, and I was so uplifted and inspired by talking to her. I always am. I mean, she can read her Twitter feed or X feed now, and I would probably be like, yay, she's amazing. One more episode you might want to check on is Terry Rich. His episode was really interesting. He was in an $8 billion industry, had a big part in that industry, and found one of the biggest scandals in U.S. history while he was in that position. So you definitely want to see what did he learn from that and what could we learn from that. It's a great story, and he's a really lovely guy. And Gene Sparrow as well. Gene has multiple Emmys and has an incredible career. You've probably already heard of her. She's really extraordinary, and I'm sure you'd really love to hear more of what her insights are on how we can all level up in our professional and even our personal lives. You're going to like that one a lot too. Also, we have some more practical ones that I really loved. How to guarantee more $1 million deals immediately. With one of the guys that wrote the guerrilla selling books, Mark S.A. Smith. He passed away right after he did the episode, and was a really good friend of mine for decades. I worked with them. I worked with the guerrilla selling guys for a long time. They went from having just a few seminars they were doing to doing like 400 seminars and 17 guys, and I got to help. And they went, from having sold a lot of books to having sold 26, 28 million copies of the Gorilla series. So just, they're really, really amazing people. But he has a lot of interesting things to say and very, very practical. And so I'm really glad that we captured that before we lost him. And so he has some great points on there. Also, I mean, Craig Handley talks about how do you managing, how do you manage a lot of people? He has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employees, 1,400, and you can, things that you can do that'll get engagement, things you can do that will, you can build your business by 28 times. He's got some techniques in there. I thought that was really, really good. One of my oldest friends is this guy, Bill Marsili, who co-authored the movie, the Denzel Washington movie, Deja Vu, which if you have not seen it, it's a really, really good movie. But he talks about how he treated Hollywood like a business and the way that he made the connections and the way that he was able to break in. It's a two-part episode. It's really interesting. He's one of my nearest and dearest, but really smart. And he also has one story he tells about New York that you got to see it. You definitely got to see it. And by the way, stick around to the end of this solo holiday episode because there's something special for all of you who've been watching and listening and been a part of it, and all the people that have been working on so hard on the show. Something special for you at the end that you are going to want to see. And then, so yeah, Bill was great with that. And then Mary Lawrence Richards she really pivoted her company in Chicago, where I often live when I'm not in Europe like I am now. She really pivoted her company, which is a graphics company, which graphics companies were just dying by the zillions. And she pivoted in such a way that they became unbelievably valuable and have just grown by leaps and bounds. So how she looked for an opening, what she did, really valuable if you own a business for sure. And then Erin Marquez, if you haven't seen her podcast, it's great. Ready Yet? Ready Yet? Let's go. but it's like, what are those business tactics that help you scale your business? And she's got a very forthright quality about her, quirky, fun, passionate, and yeah, I love her. She's awesome. And then Steve Fretson has a great business that he has built. And he talks a lot about that, the network advantage. Like, how do you use the network that you've worked so hard to build to really grow and scale your business and sell a whole lot more? Really, really interesting. And then Matt Murray talked about smart scaling. How do you scale your business? And he had three interesting ways to scale your business that I hadn't always heard before. And he'd done some things I found really interesting. So you're going to love that. And then Eric Lazar is one of my favorite people. He talked about, how do you triple your business? Not just double your business in 1 year or less, like I'm always talking about, but how do you triple it? And it's like, you have to stand out from your competition. Another guy who does a different kind of graphics, wraps and on buses and cars and big displays and stuff like that. He's just masterful with marketing, really understands visual marketing in a way I'd never seen before. There's some interesting techniques that he used early on that could be used by anybody. I thought it was really, really interesting. And then Heather Landry talked about the CEO secret. She is a CEO, and how do you propel your business faster? What do you do to make that happen? Just a really down to earth, wonderful conversation. I thought she was so inspiring and lovely. And then Mark Hoverman talked about unlimited potential. I mean, who does not want unlimited potential? And what is that one key asset that you need to drive loyalty and of course, business growth? Like, what is that going to take? I'll tell you about a few more of them in a minute. But meanwhile, let me get back to our story. So there I am, and I'm starting to tell all of this and what has happened, right? This lovely gentleman, he's got a tag on, says Juan, and he's, we're having this conversation in his taxi, and he's saying he's going to tell me a story. And I'm thinking, all right, big guy, tell me some sort of fabulous story. And he proceeds to tell me the story. He says that years ago, years and years ago, he had been in the Vietnam War with the Americans on the American side. And then when the Americans left, it was pretty bad for anybody who'd been on that side naturally. And he was in great, great danger, but he wanted to see his family. So he thought it was safe to go back home. So he goes back to his village and he sees his mother and she cries. And then she starts cooking. And all she did was cook and cook and cook and cook and cook. And there was he said there was enough food for like 3 villages. This woman just loved him through food. And he had been in and out of the jungle during the war, and his wife was there, and they had 2 children. One was very tiny, and one was a little bit older, maybe 4. And so the kids are crawling all over him. And he said it was absolutely the best day of his life. And so people are coming in and saying, hello, we missed you. We're so glad you're here. And then at sunset, he's on the floor. His 2 kids are just like crawling all over him, beating him up. And it was magical until there's a knock at the door, a really loud knock at the door. And nobody wants to open it. They break down the front door. And these big guys come in and they've got batons and they've got weapons and they come marching in they have shackles and they have chains, and they look around and they've tried to hide him in some laundry and that didn't go well. So they drag him out and they beat him up and they put him in chains and they put him into the shackles and they start dragging him out. His mother literally started hitting him with a wooden spoon and they pushed her to the floor. And his wife is still clinging around his neck and his kids are around his ankles and his waist. And they are just sobbing uncontrollably, cannot let him go. And he gets literally dragged away and taken to this camp. And it's not like, they have cable TV. This is serious deprivation. He said all the people that he had served with were there, and the people who got there before him are not doing well. He said within 6 months, most of them had all died or committed suicide. There was hardly any food. He kept surviving by finding roots and things that they had had in the village that he knew how to cook, and that he was finding ways to survive when there was so little food. And then he was doing everything he could to stay alive. And, after a year of this, a year and a half of this, 2 years, not one person that he knew was still alive. not one. He was all alone with all these new people coming in. And so he said one day he sat and he was so sad and so alone. He didn't know what to do. And he said, so he prayed and he said, God, why am I here? I could relate to that. And he heard a voice in his head. And the voice said, you're here to look into the eyes of your children every day that you can. You're here to look into the eyes of your children every day that you can. That's it. Nothing fancy. That was it. And that was enough to keep him alive. That sense of purpose was enough to keep him alive. 5 years go by, 10 years go by, 12, 15, 19 years, he's still there. He's still there. And I said, those guards that were guarding you, how did you feel about them? I mean, after all those years, didn't you hate them? I hate them. I've known you for 22 minutes. How on earth did you manage this? And he said, I hated them for probably 18 years. And he said, and then something changed when he found that sense of purpose in there. You know, he said, I realized we're all the same. They want to look into the eyes of their children too. They have some sense of purpose of why they're here, whatever that might be. They're, we're all the same. There's no point in hating them. We're all the same. And then a short while later, after he had that revelation, he's let out. I mean, no fanfare, no explanation, no nothing. Just let out into the street with nothing. So he made his way back to his mother's house and asked about his wife. They all were certain that he was dead. They had notifications that he was dead. They thought he was dead. So she'd moved to Hawaii, met someone else, got married, and his children were grown, you know? And so he said he didn't quite know what to do. But she said, no, we're going to find some money for you, scrape together money. Everyone in the village worked to get him some money to go over to Hawaii. So he goes to Hawaii, gets a job driving a cab so he can afford to live there and stay there. And it takes him months to get the courage up to talk, to call his former now wife. And he calls her and he sends her a letter so she doesn't faint when she gets the call. And then he calls her and she says, I'm so glad you're alive. I'm so sorry I didn't know. And he's like, I know you didn't know. It's been so long. It's okay. And then she said, you have to come see the children. And he said, no, I think they're going to be mad at me. And she goes, they're not mad at you. They're dying to see you. You have to come. So it takes him a couple more weeks to get up the courage to be able to go and see them. And even the day he's supposed to see them, it took him like an hour to get out of the car in the cab and make his way up to the apartment and knock. And so it's the hardest thing he'd ever done, I guess. And so he knocks on the door and she opens the door and he said, she's still beautiful. You know, she's so gorgeous. And he sees behind her is this very nice gentleman. He has to admit. I said, were you jealous? He said, yes. But he could let it go. It was okay. And then behind there, he sees a boy who's now a man, and a little girl is now a young woman. And he walks in the door, and the boy, who'd been like 4, walks over and says, oh my gosh, I know you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are my father. We are honored to have you here. Please join us. We've made a meal and all that. And then the little girl was like 2, and he's thinking she is not going to remember anything about this. And she walks up to him and she looks at him and she touches his face and she like right at his eyes. And she says, I remember a day where I was sad. And I remember your eyes. I would know them anywhere. You are my dad. You're my daddy. And everyone's in tears. Now I'm in tears. Everyone's in tears, right? Unbelievable. And I thought, our problems seem sort of small sometimes when we see what other people face, right? So I said, okay. That's the most amazing story I've ever heard in my life. You win. And, and so he looks back at me and he says, okay, your turn. I said, what? I've got nothing. I mean, I really have nothing. I can't fathom what else I could talk about at this point. I really can't. I said, I mean, that's just stunning. And he said, no, you have a story. I want to know what it is. And I said, well, something popped into my head, but I've never told anyone ever because we still in traffic. We got time. Oh, great. Now I get to tell the story. So, meanwhile, back in today's time, I want to tell you some more about some of these amazing people who inspire me on those dark days, just like Juan did, and that you should be watching on this podcast if you haven't had a chance to see them yet. Sue Kirshner. Oh my gosh, switching gears completely. Turbo branding. How do you ignite big growth in your business? And she's smart and lovely and kind and thoughtful and just a good soul. She has her own podcast that is absolutely wonderful. I highly recommend you check it out, and really interesting. And then how to write, one of our most popular episodes was a two-part episode with Betty Ann Green, who is our in-house ghostwriters for people who want to write a book, because especially if you want to do more speaking, you can't really speak unless you have a book. And there's something about kind of claiming your territory of what you stand for as a business owner, as a person, that just, I know, it draws more business to the company and it makes you, I don't know, makes you level up as a human being. So I think writing a book is a powerful exercise in defining the unique selling proposition of your company or you, or what, showing what your values are or how you want to make the world better. But anyway, Betty Ann was really great because she explained a lot about how do you write a book, how do you work with a ghostwriter, what do you look for. So yeah, if you want to want to write a book, you definitely want those two things. And yeah, those are, but how do you write a bestseller? Like what's it take to write a bestseller? She really knows. And then Melissa Legowski, she's had her business for over 20 years. And she talked a lot about how do you find that niche that you can really own. And then that will, changes everything. I've had it happen to me in my business, where you find that lane that you can own, that uniqueness that you have, that when you're starting out, you don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's like everybody else. But she found it, and we talk a lot about how you can find yours and how powerful that is. And then Linda Hollander talked about how do you get $1 million sponsorships. Most people don't realize how much there is in sponsorships today. There are companies that are really looking for places to sponsor, and that can be anywhere from a few hundred or a few $1,000s in a month or for an event. She said it's usually at least 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, and there are $1 million sponsorships where you can run around. So I have a lot of clients that have done some amazing things to sponsor. We, of course, have our fantastic sponsor that I will take a moment to tell you about, Veritas Bot, who is one of the greatest human beings I have ever met in my entire life. And not just because she's our sponsor and she sends us probably more referrals than any client I have ever had in my entire career. She's also just brilliant. They do estate planning, they do financial services. If there's ever any question that you have about any of those things, you don't have to be a bazillionaire to work with her. Your finances can be messy. She doesn't care. She's going to support you in making sure that you are handling your business and your personal affairs with integrity. And that's so important. So yeah, so I love her. But anyway, she is our sponsor and we've been very lucky to have her and continue to work with her. But if you want to see Linda Hollander's episode on how you can get your own sponsors, it's really good. And, she talks about that number one thing that you need to know to attract sponsors. What do you do and how do you do it? And then Paige Arnoff Fenn, holy cow, what a background that gal has. You're going to find her really interesting. So worked for some of the biggest company, worked with as a consultant, some of the biggest companies in the world. Unbelievable. And then she talked in that episode, we talked about, the number one branding insider secret. How do you stand out and grow your business? Interesting stuff. But she's got really, really good content, somebody that everybody should know. And then Pat Monsieur, who's our Canadian friend who also is a CEO and a consultant, travels around the world. She talks about a CEO's power vision. And that's what are those insider secrets when you want to build not just a thriving business, but a more fulfilling and thriving business. Very interesting stuff. And she talks about, get yourself a coach, a consultant, reach out for help. Don't always think you have to do it yourself. Sometimes the universe will provide you with Yoda in the front seat of the taxi, but sometimes you have to go out and find your own Yoda to teach whatever it is that you need to know. Now, meanwhile, back in the cab, I'll stop sniffling, I swear. Um, I'm in the cab, as you know, and he's looking back at me expectantly, and it's the world's longest cab ride all of a sudden, getting over to the Hilton. And we are going at like 2 inches an hour, admittedly. And so and he says, U-turn, you know, oh, great. And I said, huh, okay, I'm going to tell him something I don't think I'd ever told anybody. Maybe one person. Oh, yeah, I mean, my friend Tim, but that's about it. And then, so I said, well, I was 4 years old, 4.5. I do not think he thought I was going to go back that far. And I said, I was 4.5 years old and I was in water. I didn't know how to swim. And I hit my head pretty hard and I went down in the water and I drowned, basically. I mean, I felt hot and I felt cold. I felt weird. Um, Something strange was happening to me and I didn't understand it at the time. I'm not trying to understand it now. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm going through this white, bright tunnel thing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And suddenly I'm on the other side of whatever this is. At least that's what it felt like anyway. Again, I don't know if this was lack of oxygen to my brain or that I have a very active imagination or what. At the time, even at 4.5, I could tell it was profound. It was powerful. Again, whatever it is above my pay grade. um, but something was happening that I never expected to experience, and I haven't experienced since. So there I am, and all of a sudden there's these beings, and I think that they must be angels, and maybe they were, and they're having a conversation about me. They're having a conversation with me, and they're saying life is hard. Sometimes life is really hard, harder than anyone ever expects. All these experiences are great. They grow our collective understanding of what it is to be human. But life is hard, and life is particularly hard for this little girl. They meant me. And it's going to get harder before she's, you know, 10, 12, 15, 18. And I was like, oh, great. And they said, maybe you just want to stay here. And I remember thinking, it's really nice here. It's so warm. Oh, it's so beautiful and peaceful and, felt like paradise, right? Something popped into my head and I thought to myself, nope, I want to go back. And I literally pulled my little 4.5-year-old self up in front of these folks and said, if you let me go back, I'm going to help millions of people grow and succeed. I don't know how, but I'm going to do that. I have a feeling I have a purpose and I need to be there to do it. So you need to let me go back. And I waited. And I waited. And they all kind of exchanged glances, looked at me. And then all of a sudden I feel like I'm going 1,000,000 miles back the other direction. And then I feel like I'm up above my body and I'm thinking, wow, I'm really small. When you're 4.5, you're little. And then I look at myself and I think, wow, I'm really blue. But again, this is what I felt, what I recalled. It's what it looked like to me anyway. And I'm blue, blue, blue. And there's a guy standing over me and he's got his hand on my wrist and he's saying, I can't get a pulse. It may be too late. And I can hear sirens and I can hear things happening. And I'm thinking, I just made this promise. I've got to get back in there. How do I get from wherever the heck I am and then a second later, I feel like I'm back in my body. I'm freezing cold and shivering and coughing up, water and stuff like that. And there's blood on the back of my head. And that was very frightening. Um, but I never really talked about it again. I never really told anybody what happened. and it changed me. And sometimes I feel like, maybe I'm not living up to that thing I promised, you know, maybe I never will. Maybe I made a promise in vain. And that's why I've been sad lately, really sad. I think maybe there's more in me I'm not doing to help people. I think that's why we're all here, you know, to help each other. And he said, how many you got so far? What? How many you got so far? You said millions. How many you got so far? You're not so young. You better get going. Went, oh man, I'm glad I bared my soul to Yoda here. I said, I'm a professional speaker. I've spoken to thousands of groups, probably hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people. Oh, no, no, no. No, you need more. You need to write a book. You need more. You need to help more people. You need to get going. That's why you're upset. I was like, yeah, yeah, I guess you're right. Thank you, coach. And I was like, yeah, actually, you're right. You are right. Thank you. I appreciate the advice. It's like this angel that showed up to help me, made me feel better. I'm sure you help a lot of people. I said, thank you. So we get to the Hilton and I get out and it's still raining and my suitcases are cold and I'm cold and wet and it's all a mess. And I'm crying. Now I'm really crying. And I throw my arms around him. Now we're bonded, you know. And I said, and I gave him the biggest tip I have ever given anybody in my entire life. And I said, you go take your children out to dinner and look into their eyes for me and tell them what a wonderful man their father is and how happy I am that you're out and you're safe and you can live your purpose. And he goes, you live your purpose now. Go write book. That was my timer. I better get going myself. So I go inside the Hilton and I write the first 50 pages of my very first book. And the next thing I know, I've been scared to be in front of bigger groups and I've been scared to be in front of more groups and I've been scared to do bigger consulting projects. I've been scared. I've been scared. And somehow I realized that I had this purpose. I had this meaning in my life to help people grow and to help people succeed. And I wasn't doing anybody any favors by hiding that. And I really went for it. Next thing I knew, I'd spoken to 3.5 million people now, and participants and audiences. I got big corporations I never could have imagined wanted to work with me as a speaker, as a consultant. I got to work with small companies, medium companies, startups, big, small. I mean, just things I never could have imagined. And our company grew and grew and grew and grew to a point where now we have this incredible group of unbelievable we call ourselves the dream team, this incredible group of people helping people with so many more things than I ever could have imagined, helping them when they want to grow their business, when they want to scale their business, when they want to control the beast that is their business, when they want that overseas help or when that local help or, or they want to, figure out how, how do we scale? How do we grow? All those things that I was good at then attracted all these people who are good at all these other things, consultants that, like Kim Adele Randall, John Lanier, Tim Van Meegan's company, ProAction, all these amazing people. Betty Ann, I told you, is our in-house ghostwriter. And Eunice Reyes in-house, Joseph Reyes, who does all the videos and all the creative stuff that we're able to do with website. We're doing websites for people. We're doing podcasts for people. Our podcast has launched and become, the first month we're doing this, we got 22,000 downloads. I expected like a few hundred. I just about died. But it's because my team is amazing. Leslie Orlaza, who is our chief results officer, who brings in all the overseas people for people having trouble finding talent. And for us, she sourced all these amazing people. Jamie Carlos is amazing at keeping my calendar straight and keeping me knowing where to be and what to do and all of that. Bernadette came on recently full time to help with the creative side of things. We just have all these amazing people that we get to work with. The outside professional COO, CEO, CFO, um, that are fractional, and then all these various different incredible, skilled geniuses that are a part of this wonderful group that I love so much, the Inspiring Victory Tribe. So, um, make sure that you watch every episode because there's some amazing people on it. Let me share a few more with you. Here we go. Hang on. All right, get techie here. Um, Walt Hampton, I want you to see that one. How do you master your time? How do you master yourself? And have a business that really sets you free. He is interesting and delightful, and you'll really love him. He's one of the more recent ones. And in the future, we have Amy Riley's going to come in. She's spoken for huge corporations. She has a podcast that's in the top 3% in the world. She's incredible to watch. Courage of a Leader was a very popular book. You should get it. It's really good. International bestseller. She's lovely. And she'll be in talking about, how do we lead with power and integrity? That's what exactly, she's walking integrity. She's amazing. And Kim Adele Randall, again, one of those consultants that we bring in on certain projects as a fractional COO or CFO or CIO she will be on and she'll be talking about, what are the key things that companies need to do to be successful, and what are some of the things that we all are doing that are getting in the way of that success, and how do we control all of it? But she was big at Barclays Bank. She's high up there. She's been a CEO, a CFO, a COO. She was also big at Sage, and she's very techy. And just a lovely human being. So we have some really great things that are coming up soon for you to be able to have a look at. And I know we have a lot more exciting things coming up for the new year. But have a look at the ones you haven't seen. I kind of tried to recap some of the ones that I thought were just lovely to see, and I think you'll enjoy. Meanwhile, back to the cab. So I give him the biggest tip I've ever given anyone in my life. I'm about to go upstairs. And as I mentioned, I wrote the first 50 page of my first book, which was an international bestseller. But the funniest thing to me was I'm standing at the front desk and this poor little gal behind the desk, I'm crying. There's mascara. I'm wet. My suitcases are everything that's wet and just the soggy mess. And she looks over at me and she says, "Oh dear, are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, don't start with me, honey. Don't start with me. I'm not telling that story all over again." So, um, I guess what I learned from the whole thing and the things that have happened subsequently is I think most of us, maybe it's that Marianne Williamson quote that we all know about how we're not worried about failure. We're worried that we are powerful beyond measure. And do we want to unleash that power? Do we want to be all that we can be when we've been told maybe that we can't, or when we are afraid of what will come with that? So much is expected when you're really putting yourself out there in that way. So it's been amazing for me. I'm not saying every day of my life is perfect. We all have, family members that are ill or things that happen or deaths in the family. Things happen. But I have found that since I connected to that sense of purpose that I had from 4.5, everything has felt lighter and easier and more fun and more exciting. Um, and I've attracted some of the most brilliant minds in the world to be my friends, my confidants, my consultants that we bring into clients. This tribe that we have now with the Inspiring Victory Show has changed my life. You've changed my life for being a part of it. So I think every one of us has that sense of purpose in us. Maybe they didn't have near-death experience as a kid, but somehow, whether it's looking into the eyes of your children every single day, which is a great purpose, or whether it's to reach millions and millions of people and help them grow and succeed like me, or whether it's somewhere in between or something bigger and grander. I think we all have that inside us, and I think we run away from it. I know I did, but this is a new year coming up. This is your chance. This is your moment. This is your time to find that special thing in yourself, to bring out the best in the people who work for you and with you, and go for it in a way you maybe never did before. So to do something brave every single solitary day, do something brave every day. And you won't believe how much you can double your business for sure. You can double your impact, and you can change the world for the better. Thank you very, very much for being a part of the show. We're going to, thank a lot of the people who've been watching. You'll see the credits to the movie here. You'll see all the different people who've been so kind to watch and be a part of the tribe. I'm so grateful for you for being a part of the tribe. You add a lot and you contribute a lot. Every time you comment, I'm so excited. I jump up and down like a little kid. Thank you for being a part of the tribe. Thank you for supporting this huge team it takes to put the podcast and the show and put the Inspiring Victory show together. Thank you. And we want to be inspiring for you and we want to be inspired by you. Tell us what inspires you in the comments. Tell us who inspires you. Tell us which show you like the best. What would you like more of? We're making this thing for you and we want to introduce you to even more fabulous people in the new year 2025. So I hope 2024 was spectacular for you. I know in my bones 2025 is going to be your best year yet. Tap into whatever that deep sense of purpose is within you and step into it in the biggest way you feel you can. And I guarantee this will be your best year yet. And I don't know where I find you. It may be dark right now, like it's winter inside, not just outside. It may be bright and sunny and spring and everything's going great and you're about to harvest and everything's going fantastic. But don't worry, if you are in that dark place where I was, I can't guarantee a cab driver will come into your life and make you cry. But here's your notice. You're going to get through this and you will get into that spring, you'll get into that summer, you'll get in fall where there's even more harvest. Everybody has those times that are that dark. Wherever I find you, I believe in you. We believe in you. And every single person in the Inspiring Victory Tribe is here to support you. Thank you for being a part of this year. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for every comment and every like and subscribing and supporting everybody else in the tribe. That's why I built it. That's what I want for you. And I want you to have that kind of love and support from me and from everybody at the Victory Company as well. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. From everyone here at the Inspiring Victory Show and at the Victory Company as well, we want to wish you the happiest of holidays, and we'll hope that you are enjoying some time with your family and friends just like we are, and we'll be back to share some more great content with you and terrific stories for the Inspiring Victory Show come January the 15th. Looking forward to seeing you then. And thank you so much for your continued support. It means the world to me and to everybody on the team. Thanks and have a wonderful holiday season.